Welcome back, focused learners. We are jumping right into today's explainer because we've got a fascinating, deeply profound topic to unpack. We are decoding the incredibly complicated and honestly often totally invisible web of generational family trauma. To do this, we're looking through the lens of a highly personal, meticulously documented case study of a man named Ben. Ben's reflections act as a literal autopsy of a fractured family psyche. It gives us a front row seat to exactly how trauma shapes our most intimate relationships. Let's get into it.
So think about this for a second. What happens when the people closest to you, the ones who are literally supposed to know you the best, trap you in an identity that just doesn't exist? It's a chilling thought, right? But it's a universal fear, and it's the exact reality Ben woke up to. In this explainer, we're going to walk step by step through the symptoms of this dysfunction, diagnose the underlying disease, and finally, figure out the cure for a fractured family system.
Section 1. The Two Bens. Okay, let's dive into this, because the whole thing begins with a fundamental conflict. At the very center of this family dynamic is a battle between two completely distinct, mutually exclusive identities. On one side, we have what's called authentic Ben. This is his true self, right? The real, boundary-setting, truth-telling guy who just wants to exist without being constantly scrutinized. But on the other side, we have what the source material calls attachment Ben. Now, this is where it gets super complex. Attachment Ben isn't real. He is a completely fabricated, mythologized amalgamation created by the family. They literally need this twisted-up version of Ben to exist so they can maintain their own dysfunctional attachments and power dynamics. The family demands attachment Ben, which means authentic Ben is constantly being suppressed. And this suppression shows up in something called the nuh-uh phenomenon. Imagine just sharing your genuine true self. Something as simple as saying your favorite TV show is Ren and Stimpy, or maybe opening up about the absolute worst day of your life to a sibling. For Ben, these moments of vulnerability are instantly met with a nuh-uh from his family. They literally tell him, no, your favorite show is actually The Simpsons, or they'll say his worst day wasn't actually that bad. It's just a constant stream of disbelief, dismissal, or flat-out accusations of lying. Decades of this toxic scrutiny leave Ben feeling like a total imposter in his own authenticity. Section 2. Anatomy of a trauma response. So how does a family even get to this point? We're going to transition into the mechanics now, and there's a really critical distinction we have to make here. We are going to diagnose this trauma empathetically. We are not here to villainize Ben's family members because, as Ben himself realizes, their actions are actually deeply ingrained survival mechanisms.
What's really interesting here is this concept of the psyche fracture. This is a condition within a family system where individuals feel literally entitled to authorship over another person's reality. For instance, Ben's sister, who he refers to in her toxic state as Brookie D, constantly dictates Ben's identity. But the source material notes this isn't necessarily some malicious character flaw. It's actually a psychological defense mechanism. It's a rigid trauma response stemming from a chaotic childhood spent surviving under narcissistic rule. Basically, they controlled Ben's reality because they once had absolutely zero control over their own.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next concept, trauma supply. You know how a physical body needs nutrients? Well, a traumatized psyche sometimes seeks out dysfunctional fuel. Trauma supply is the satisfaction or false sense of security someone gets from putting someone else down. In this case study, a family member might proudly and publicly shame Ben, standing there with their hands on their hips, looking around for group validation, all just to feed their own trauma supply and soothe those deep-seated insecurities. This gets compounded by a zero-sum mentality. This is the really tragic belief that if one person's value goes up, another person's must inevitably go down. Ben's brother showed this through some pretty devastating Freudian slips. As the brother's economic status rose, he jokingly called Ben a leech and a rat. Because of this zero-sum lens, the family went through a massive role reversal. The brother needed to elevate himself, which meant Ben was violently shifted from being the family's golden child straight down to the devalued scapegoat.
Section 3. The family scapegoat. That brings us perfectly to our next phase. Every fractured family system needs a lightning rod, and Ben became exactly that. He became the family whipping dog, essentially forced to bear the absolute brunt of the collective dysfunction.
Let's ground these clinical concepts in Ben's actual, lived, painful reality. What does it actually look like to be the scapegoat? Well, it looks like showing up to a family gathering at the Christmas cabins only to be met with looks of disgust and ice-cold hugs. It looks like driving over to help your brother build a chicken coop, only to have him scream at you and mock your junky truck right in front of a crowd. It means being called a liar behind closed doors about your own medical and mood disorders. And honestly, incredibly, it means carrying the family financially, paying for care, giving away cars, only to be collectively ignored and casually told to get a job. It's just a staggering lack of empathy.
And let's look at how this builds into a terrifyingly predictable timeline. This isn't just random, it's a cycle. Day 1 starts with a love bomb, intoxicating charm and acceptance when the family needs Ben. But inevitably, by week 1, it shifts to public shaming, where history gets rewritten to mock him. By month 1, when Ben reacts or tries to set a boundary, he gets the cold shoulder. His pain is completely ignored. And finally, by year 1, it hits the discard phase, where he's uninvited from holidays and villainized. And because they absolutely refuse to talk about the past, the family uses this exact pattern to wipe the slate clean and restart the abuse over and over again, just keeping their heads firmly in the sand.
Facing this endless loop, Ben turns to Stoic philosophy to survive. As Marcus Aurelius famously wrote, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Now, this is a massive breakthrough for Ben. He realizes that if he lashes out in anger, he's really just replicating the rage of their abusive stepfathers. To truly heal, he can't just play the game. He has to transcend it completely. Section 4. Breaking the Cycle. Which brings us to the narrative climax of today's explainer. Understanding the trauma is one thing, but stopping it? That requires action. This is the exact moment Ben decides to stop being the whipping dog and reclaim his power.
So the crucial point boils down to this single, penetrating question: were you cruel at the cabins? Ben poses this to his sister as the ultimate litmus test for accountability. It cuts right through all the fog of gaslighting. A no or a non-answer, that's pure denial. But a yes, a simple acknowledgement of reality, that becomes an answer of healing and truth. Because without a shared reality, there is just no relationship.
When Ben doesn't get that shared reality, he executes a boundary. He calmly tells his family he won't be around for a while. He goes no contact to protect his own recovery. Now look at the reaction here. A healthy family would ask what's wrong, right? They'd express deep concern. Ben's family? They responded with total surprise, muttered "good riddance," and immediately villainized him. Ben walking away wasn't some sudden fit of rage. It was a totally necessary eviction from a dynamic that was fundamentally, structurally broken.
Section 5. A blueprint for healing. But hey, this explainer doesn't end in despair. Through his exhaustive analysis, Ben actually lays out a highly actionable, profoundly hopeful blueprint for collective healing. He breaks it down into 4 critical steps. First up, self-awareness. You have to accept that these trauma responses and proclivities actually live inside you. Second, acknowledgement. You've got to do the hard work of standing up and owning your abusive behaviors. Third, empathy. You must actively choose to see the authentic person across from you and genuinely recognize the pain you've caused them. And fourth, depersonalization. You have to look objectively at the past without seeing it as some zero-sum attack on your own character. As Ben notes, our trauma responses are absolutely not our fault, but we are entirely responsible for acknowledging them and taking the wheel. The ultimate goal of those steps is establishing what's called a mutual reality. This means a shared understanding of the truth, completely free from the group suppression and denial that kept Ben trapped. Ben is basically demanding a co-op mode, a 50-50 relationship where everyone is fully responsible for themselves. And guys, we know this works. Ben applied this exact framework to help his mother process her own severe abuse from past marriages. By establishing a mutual reality with her, she quieted those abusive voices in her head and finally found the freedom to start painting again. It's beautiful.
Ben perfectly summarizes this empathetic, yet totally unyielding lens with another incredible quote from Marcus Aurelius. "Show me my mistake in any thought or action, and I shall gladly change. The harm is to persist in one's own self-deception and ignorance." See, Ben doesn't blame his brother or his sister for having trauma. He doesn't hate them for the pain they carry. But he fiercely demands that they step out of their self-deception if they ever want to actually know the authentic Ben.
So, we're going to leave you today with this provocative question to reflect on. What happens when a family chooses the comfort of a shared delusion over the liberation of a painful truth? It takes immense courage to look at our own blind spots, to drop the characters we play, and to actually heal. Take a hard look at your own relationships today. Are you engaging with the authentic person in front of you or just an attachment you've created? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive, Focus Learners. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.